Welcome back to the Beyond the Buckets. I am happy to have former University of Oregon Duck, Katie Gruys. Welcome to the program.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Chris. Appreciate it.
And I believe you are the youngest associate head coach now coaching at Southern Utah University. So give everybody a 3-minute backstory on you and just kind of how you got to where you're at, if you could do that in 3 minutes or not.
I don't know if I can do it in 3 minutes. No. Yeah, thank you for having me. Appreciate it. Grew up in Minnesota, born and raised from a small town called Annandale, Minnesota. It's kind of an hour northwest of the Twin Cities. Played, a ton of sports growing up, lived on the lake. So I just, I was always doing activities. Played 5 sports in high school, and just kind of whatever sport I was in was my favorite. I always wanted to play basketball, like collegiately. But as I was growing up in this small town, you have a great community, but I really wanted to figure out how to go Division I. And so my way to go Division I was track and field. And so my brother was my track coach. And so we really kind of honed into that after my 10th grade year. And so we had a great basketball program, great volleyball program, but track was kind of my main thing. And so started getting recruited by some top schools, went out to my official visit for University of Oregon, and it's Tracktown, USA. So to a track kid, it's kind of a no-brainer. You want to go there, win a national championship. And so that's where I went after high school. Enrolled there in the fall. Obviously, all fall I was missing basketball, and I was talking to my family about it. Hey, I miss basketball, blah, blah, blah. And they're like, of course you miss basketball. You've been playing it, the last 15 years of your life.
Mm-hmm.
It's normal to go a bunch of multiple sports. And that's what all those Midwest kids do. They play multiple sports, especially in a small town. So what I did, I was friends with a practice player at Oregon for the women's team. And I was like, hey, can we just go get some shots up? And he said, absolutely. Like, let's go get shots up tomorrow morning. So this is beginning of December. So basketball season's already started for Oregon. And so we're going to get shots up, and how the courts kind of adjusted. I was shooting on this end, and then you enter the door on this end. So I have my back to the door. And what happens is Paul Westhead and his whole staff walks in, and I don't notice. And I'm just, shooting, and they're about to start practice in like a half an hour. And they actually thought I was a girl that they invited for a tryout that day. So they're assuming that my name's Chloe Styles. And so then Chloe walks in, and they're like, wait, you're Chloe. So who's that? And so then he comes up to me, and it's Paul Westhead. And I'm like, hi, coach. And I was like, oh, I'm Katie. I'm a freshman. I'm on the track team. I was just using the gym to get some shots up. Mm-hmm. He's like, well, this girl's going through a tryout. Can you go through a tryout too? Because they had so many injuries that year with the system. They run, their bodies kind of break down sometimes. And so they had some ACL injuries earlier in that season. So I remember just thinking, like, this is my chance. And so me and Chloe both performed well in that tryout. And so later that day, they signed us and made sure all of our eligibility was good. And then 2 days later, I'm flying out for my first game, which is at Illinois, in basically my backyard, because I grew up in the Big Ten. Yeah. And my parents drive down, and it was kind of a whirlwind. So it was pretty awesome, super welcoming. All the girls were awesome, the coaches. And then, so I was 2 years, my freshman, sophomore year, I did both basketball and track, and that was with Westhead and his staff. Mm-hmm. And then the coaching change going into my junior year. And I knew of Kelly Graves and his staff a little bit just because I have family in Spokane and how big of Gonzaga, fans they are up there.
For sure.
So when he came in, I was obviously juiced about that. And so it's been awesome to have kind of both backgrounds of Westhead and then see what KG's done with the program. My freshman year, we won 4 games. My sophomore year, we actually made a run in the NIT a little bit with Westhead's system. And then my junior year with KG, and then our senior year, we made it to the Final Four of the WNIT. And at that time, that was the school record of wins that we had at Oregon. And obviously they beat it now with, a real Final Four in the NCAA, but kind of a little bit of a whirlwind. So then after at Oregon, knew I wanted to get into coaching right away. And kind of always knew I wanted to be a coach. Like even growing up in Minnesota, I watched Minnesota Gophers, and I remember I was in 4th grade in 2004, and Lindsay Whalen and Janelle McCarville are playing in the Final Four. And I told my mom, I was a big, chubby kid, and I was a post player, but I thought I had moves. Uh-huh. I told my mom, I want to be the next Lindsay Whalen in Janelle McCarville's body. And she's like, who is this girl? Like, that's hilarious, because Janelle's like this big farm kid, makes awesome post moves, and Lindsay Whalen's such a savvy point guard.
Right.
But that whole time in 2004, like looking back at it, I was always watching Pam Borton, like on the sideline, seeing how she's reacting to everything. And so looking back, it's pretty obvious that I wanted to be a coach. And then growing up, obviously the Minnesota Lynx were winning championship after championship too. So I've always kind of admired Cheryl Reeve at Minnesota too, and just always been paying attention to how is she acting in situations in the game, late game situations, how does she, coordinate her timeouts and stuff like that. So after Oregon, I got a graduate assistantship at Clemson University, and then was supposed to be there for 2 years. I was there for 1 year. The experience from going Pac-12 to ACC was awesome, just because the Pac-12 and the ACC are similar, but so different at the same time.
For sure.
And I was planning to be there for 2 years. My master's is in intercollegiate athletics. And so loved my time there. And we did really, really well that year. It was, it was a program that was building. And then I got a call from Coach Kelly at Oregon. He said, hey, there's a Division III job 45 minutes up the road from us called Willamette University. That head coach called me and see if I knew anybody that would be interested. Would you be interested? And I was like, well, should I be interested? I'm going from Division I, a powerhouse at Oregon, powerhouse at Clemson, and I was like, why should I go Division III? So I asked him all those questions. He's like, because you just need experience. You're 22 years old. You're young enough. You can go to any division. You just need experience. And, there's different ways to kind of go up the coaching ranks. You can stay Division I and go video coordinator, director of ops, all that kind of stuff. And I said, well, if you were me, what would you do? And he said, I'd go Division III and just get the experience. The money will come later. Nothing will outdo your experience. And so I was like, all right, I'll interview. And so then got that job at Willamette University, had an awesome boss, Peg Swagner, and she had Division I experience herself. She played at Oregon, and then she was an associate head coach at Portland State, so in the Big Sky. And so she knew my goals of wanting to get back to the Division I level. And so she was kind of able to groom me. We had a really couple successful years at Willamette University. And then last summer, the job opened up here at Southern Utah. And Tracy played under KG too. So it was kind of just perfect opportunity, perfect fit. I'm all about fit. I don't want to just go anywhere. And so I just thought it was an awesome opportunity to be here at Southern Utah, and I love it here. So
for sure.
3 minutes.
That's good. Well, a lot of detail, and I kind of want to take a deeper dive on a couple of topics. Were you able to do your track and field as well as basketball for all 4 years?
Yeah, so I did it for 2 years, and then the last 2 years I decided not to. I had some back injuries, and so it was hard just with all the different lifting. And then track is obviously, you got 2 seasons. You got indoor season, you got outdoor season. So every year I was missing indoor season, and then I would be ready for outdoor season. And so it got to be a lot. And then when Kelly came, I was kind of really, really bought into what we wanted to accomplish. And then I earned a scholarship my senior year basketball, because track is partial, and then basketball is obviously full ride or nothing. So it was awesome to get kind of rewarded for my hard work on the basketball side.
For sure. And you talked about Lindsay Whalen, who is now coaching at Minnesota, right?
Yeah.
So my cousin played, or my cousin's Danielle Robinson, and she played with them for 2 years, and she got to work, basically under her for and go to practice with her every single day. So I got a lot of stories from that. So it's good to hear.
I'm a huge D-Rob fan.
Oh, are you?
Yeah, I like her. Who's gonna win the game tonight?
Of course, the Aces.
I think definitely be competitive the whole series. I'm really intrigued.
Seattle's tough. I mean, Sue Bird at almost age 40, which was unbelievable. I mean, this won't air until the series is over, but I'm really looking forward to it. I'm glad Brianna was able to get back, and she seems to be playing at even higher level than when she left. So that's awesome. And then I love the fact that you talked about female hoopers that you watched when you were younger. One of the things that I'll ask you later on is how to continue to further the women's game, because as a women's basketball coach myself, I'm always thinking about how to further the game. How can we get more excitement around the game? The NBA finals and the WNBA finals are going on at the same time, which has never happened. But there's so much more coverage for the men's side. And, I just appreciate the fact that you were watching women's basketball at a young age.
I'm obsessed. So yeah. Yeah.
um,
I think it's super important to have those role models growing up. I think Eugene basketball in the women's side hasn't been big, and so now that obviously Oregon's done what they've done, there's a ton of little girls that want to be the next Sabrina. So you're gonna see like a spike in Oregon basketball in 10 years because all of them grew up with Sabrina. You might not see it right now in high school, but you're going to see it pretty soon just because of all the hype behind Sabrina and Ruthie and what Oregon State's doing too. And I would say UP for that matter too. So
for sure. No, Portland had a great year. They were recruiting a couple of our players last year. And then obviously Oregon, who would have been the national champions this year. I firmly believe that. I have Mignon Moore coming on pretty soon too. So she's going to talk about that. But tell me about some of the struggles that you've had because, you've told a great story, obviously, and there's so many triumphs and things that you've probably had to overcome. For people that really don't understand, like, you're not immune to struggle just like everybody else. So what were some of the struggles that you had trying to get to where you're at right now?
Oh gosh, so many. I would say one of the biggest struggles is just, I think, I wasn't a star player. I wasn't an All-American. I always say my GPA was higher than my points per game. So, you went to Oregon and I was like, yeah, but I was a great practice player. I really made the team better in other ways on the court, but it's not like I was some stud that it's easy to just sign me to any coaching staff. And I knew that when I wanted to get into coaching that I was going to have to overcome some of those situations. It was my senior year at Oregon that, I started talking about coaching. And so what I did, and I wanted to get more experience. So I didn't necessarily want to stay at Oregon, and become a graduate assistant for them. And they don't have graduate assistants, so it wouldn't have worked anyway, but I wanted to expand my knowledge. And so I just went up to all those staffs, gave them my card, introduced myself. And I said, hey, I'm looking for a graduate assistant. I know you might not have anything available, but if you know of anybody, let me know. And so that's when Clemson came up. They were playing a home and home. And so they were coming to visit us. And I just kind of talked to their staff. And I didn't hear from their staff for, I don't know, 3-4 months. And I actually accepted a position with Tennessee with their just academic advising just to kind of get school. And then Audra Smith at Clemson called me. She's like, hey, I still have your card from like 4 or 5 months ago. And I was like, yes, I'm coming. When do you need me to be there? So I think you just really, really have to put yourself out there. And then like just struggles of like questioning if you're made for it. You know what I mean? And I've always been a driven, passionate person, but you don't get into coaching to make money, So I moved all the way from Minnesota to Oregon to South Carolina, took that leap of faith. And then after South Carolina, going back to the Division III, where, I don't think I was making any money. I was basically, maybe breaking even, spending all my own money, basically recruiting in my own car and all that kind of stuff, and just trusting the process. And there was some Division I jobs I applied for after my first season. In my second season, I just kept coming up runner up. And I was so devastated. Like my friends, I think, my friends are so excited about becoming an associate head coach because they've seen me at my lowest, like just, like you just break down sometimes when you think you got maybe a job or you're going in the right direction, you kind of just get knocked down. And, the coaches that interviewed me were all really good. Like, you're on the right path. We just chose somebody with more experience. And the only way to get experience is literally to get experience. So there is those triumphs of those, and just, because you don't really know if you're made for coaching until you're in it. And then you're like, yep, I'm made for it. Or maybe you're not. So,
For sure.
yeah.
A few, a few things that I definitely want to touch on is one, you were going through the process of not skipping steps. So you were putting yourself out there and giving every opportunity that if somebody knew of something, they would think of you, and that would, hopefully land you an opportunity later. And it obviously did. Like you were hustling, trying to get that job because you identified what you want. And then, okay, now how do I go about actually getting this position and setting myself up for later? I'm a big proponent of doing that stuff, setting yourself up for later. But when I was at Valley Christian early on in my career, and this is entering my 8th year, but I got my master's degree just in case there was a teaching job that landed. And so I was doing that while I was working my sales job at the same time, but I had that just in case I wanted to do that later. So you're setting up those stepping stones. And the other thing that you mentioned, which I think is incredible, is just like failure. Like you failed a bunch of times, like you didn't get those jobs. But the best thing that never happened to me was getting the first varsity job that I applied for, because I would probably still be trying to find that, be in that situation, and it wasn't going to be successful no matter what I did, because it just wasn't set up that way. And the right fit, to your earlier point, came around, and that was when everything kind of just laid itself out and played itself out the way it was supposed to be. But I really wanted those jobs. I felt I was overqualified at that point.
Mhm.
And they went with somebody that had played professionally and was a Division I player in the Big East, and I didn't get it. And I was shook, but I humbled myself. I actually took the JV job there and, learned and grew a little bit more before my real opportunities came. So I just really appreciate you telling the listeners about the struggles that you had, because you're not immune to that. Everybody's going to go through it. You name it. In women's basketball, men's basketball, coaches. I mean, Kelly Graves was coaching for how long before he finally got to Oregon?
Yeah, no, and he was a JUCO coach, and then he was, baling hay on the side for $1,200 a year. Like
Right.
when I would go down and visit them from Willamette, he's like, "You're making so much more money than I did when I started," but I was still, scrapping pieces here and there. But yeah, it's totally, and I think the grind just makes you appreciate it so much more when you're at where you want to be. Like I'm so happy here at Southern Utah. So
You could
it's
you could definitely tell you got great energy. And the other point, I want to say this before we continue. You hit it right on the head. Like, do you want to coach or do you want to be a famous coach? And this can go for any walk of life. Do you want to be an actor or do you want to be a famous actor? Like, if you're doing something you're passionate about, it doesn't really matter about the money. You're going to find out, you're going to figure that stuff out. And obviously finances are very, very important. But at the end of the day, if you want to do something, it's a long-term vision and the money's going to take care of itself. And, just like, the other KG, uh, it's worked out for him in the long run, but it took several years for that to happen. I always talk about being an overnight success takes 10 years. And so in 10 years from now, guess where you're going to be? I mean, you're obviously going to be, you're on the right track to being a head coach. Pretty soon, you're obviously an associate now, but just understanding that your process is going to take some time, but once you get there, it's going to be fruitful.
yep.
Tell me a little bit about being a walk-on. Like, was that difficult for you? And a lot of like most players can't be the star player either. And you were the reason why you made those teams is because you were willing to play that role and sacrifice your own personal gain for the betterment of the team. And that's how good teams are formed. And there's no it's the reason why you guys had so much success while you guys were there. And I'm sure you had not just yourself, but so many other players like that. But tell me what it was like for you to be a walk on.
Well, sometime in the future, I want to have like a walk-on bar and grill because I'm so proud of it. Honestly, when I first walked on, obviously I was so excited about it, and then there was kind of a lull period where I was a little embarrassed about it because they would be like, and my teammates were great about it, but you would still hear like maybe, "Oh, this is KG, she's a walk-on," and it'd be like,
Mm,
"Yeah, I am a walk-on." You know what I mean? So it'd be kind of just. I remember that there was some period where I was a little bit embarrassed about it. And this is kind of when the NCAA was transitioning from, I don't think we were getting cost of attendance at that point, but meals have just became a thing. Cause I think it was a player at Kentucky, said he was starving. And so they wanted to have snacks. And so we had training table, which is just, a meal after practice. And so there was a point where I was able to get it. And then there was a point where if you weren't a scholarship kid, you had to pay for it. And so I remember like having to walk into my meal after practice. And it wasn't just me, it was our other walk on too. So like, it was nice to have somebody there too with it. But then we would have to pay with our, credit card or our debit card, $15 just to eat a meal with our team. And it wasn't mandatory. Like we didn't have to spend the money, but I just remember like that sinking feeling. And my teammates used to try to like sneak me food back in the bathroom. So then I wouldn't have to pay. And so I remember there was a period where I was embarrassed about it. And then I think it was probably before I got the scholarship that, I kind of just owned it. I was like, yeah, I'm a walk-on, but like I matter to this team. I'm a really good role player. I do my job well. And I think, that comes from the coaching staff and the teammates 1 through 15. Maybe we weren't treated equally, but we were treated fairly. And so we all had a role and they really sold us that role. And so, I mean, I played behind our Pac-12 double queen, Jillian Aileen, and I'm best friends with her still. And every day I try to make her life living hell. Wow. I mean, I try to push her off the paint. I try to make her use her left. She would get so mad at me. That's a foul, Gruys. And I was like, no, it's not. They didn't call it. So, I mean, I just took that upon myself to, just make her job tough and her to get better. And so she ended up getting drafted to the WNBA. She's playing overseas in Russia, has a great contract. And so it's awesome for me to just buy into my role. And so walk-ons these days, I'm like, oh, you're a walk-on? So I know you're a hard worker. I know you don't need to get paid for your hard work. Yeah. We just awarded a walk-on 2 weeks ago. And it was like the coolest feeling I've had as a coach. And just like, and I remember coming to Southern Utah, we had a walk-on, the same walk-on, Lexa Lord. And, she thinks that I'm this really good coach and, we have a great relationship. And I was like, Lex, do you know that I was a walk-on? She's like, you were? And I was like, yeah, I was. I've been exactly where you are. And just keep grinding, keep doing what you're doing. And she was awarded a scholarship and so deserving. So I take a lot of pride in it now. But I do remember at a point being a little bit embarrassed about it.
You definitely got to get that group together. I think that'd be cool with all the walk-ons. But it just shows the type of person you are, and it takes a special type of person to be that selfless. So I also want to talk to you about Kelly Graves and some life lessons that maybe you've learned from him because he's such I would say almost a world-renowned coach now at this point. And I saw you did some interviews with him on YouTube, so it seems like you guys have a really good relationship. What have you learned from him?
I mean, I don't even know where to start. I would say just like when he came in, he just really, really shared his vision for us. And I always repeat it. He put it in our locker room, a vision so powerful, it has to become reality. So and he, not only is he talking about it, but he's talking about it all the time and he's sharing it with us. So I think that in itself is why they became a Final Four team. Obviously they had the talent and they're great coaches and X's and O's and they have kids that make shots. But, if you're sharing the vision as a coach all the time, then the players know exactly what they're working for. And then just as a family aspect, I mean, we had such a family environment when he came, really close with his wife, his kids, all the assistants and their wives and husbands and their kids. And so I think just bringing in recruits to that home visit, that family atmosphere with all of us players and seeing how close we are, that's exactly what, parents want their child to have, when they're 18 to 22 going through, just life trials and everything in college basketball. And so I would just say having that true family environment, because there's a ton of coaches that talk about it in the recruiting process, but actually having the girls over to the house, actually having them babysit for your kids, and so it was an awesome family environment. And then I would say, when I was getting to coaching, just, the things he told me of like experience, nothing can outdo experience. And I always kind of think of Pat Summitt too. Like, would Pat Summitt be a video coordinator at a Power 5 team, or would she just go to Division 3 and be an assistant and be a really good one? So just things like that. If you want to coach, you're going to coach. Recruiting. KG's huge on recruiting. So like he just always says, you know, it has to be your lifeline. You could be a really, really, really good basketball coach, and if you can't recruit talent, you're going to struggle, because then there's going to be teams in your conference that recruit at a higher level, and then they're still optimizing all their talent. They're going to beat you in a championship game. And so I remember being like, but I can develop anybody. And he's like, no, you need to recruit talent. And I was like, so I totally get it now. Of course, listen to people that have been in it for years past you.
What were some of the techniques that he would use during recruiting?
I think he's just always talking to those people that he needs to. I mean, he has a great relationship with the player, the parents, anybody in that circle. And that's just super important. You know, you share that vision, you share how you're going to use them. I like to watch film with our recruits and say, hey, watch this player. This is who we would want you to be. But just spending the time with them, I think, is the huge part. And then the last thing I would say is he always says yes. Like if a second grade teacher asks him to come speak to a class, he's going to do that. Like he's going to say yes to every single podcast, every single donor meeting, go have dinner with somebody that just asked him on a street. He gives his cell phone out to everybody. So that's what I do. So I just those little tidbit things I think are huge.
No, that's some really good insight, and always saying yes to things that are reasonable, obviously, but I like to be the same way. Like I'm not going to turn down an opportunity. There's been so many times where somebody said, hey, do you want to meet this person? And it's turned out great for both of us because we're so like-minded and different things like that. Like somebody will come to my office or I'll go to their office or whatever it may be. And now we've created this relationship based around the game that we love, but now it transforms to so many other things. So I just love that you said that. You've been at multiple levels. You know, you went from being a walk-on to a scholarship athlete. You went to obviously in the Pac-12, then you went to the ACC, then you went to Division III. What is the biggest difference in level from like Division III to Division I, like you were at Pac-12?
Well, I mean, Pac-12 to ACC was both very, very athletic conferences. And so that was pretty similar. But then there's things in the ACC, like those athletes, like are unreal athletes. I was working out girls that, you know, could dunk a tennis ball for sure, but then maybe they couldn't necessarily make a read off the ball screen. So that was kind of maybe the difference with that. Right. But like, I mean, coaching against Notre Dame, Louisville, Syracuse, Florida State, that was just unreal. And then I would say Division III, I was coaching such high IQ players because it was such a high academic school. All of our players wanted to be, you know, lawyers and doctors and go to graduate school. So they just picked up on stuff so fast. And, you know, they really, you know, you couldn't just have an offensive play or a defensive scheme against an opponent and they wouldn't ask you like, why are we doing this? What's like the analytics behind it? And so it was so fun and also difficult because I had to know my stuff because they were going to grill me on it. And so I just thought that was awesome. So I would just say like Division III level, obviously the size and athleticism isn't the same as Division I, but those kids are really, really skilled. I mean, they can shoot like none other. And then they all have handles. They're just not as big and they're not as athletic, I would say is a huge difference. I coached against Coach Meek at Portland because he was at George Fox. So we were in the same conference.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Willamette and George Fox. We had our championship game at George Fox. It would have been 2018. Yeah. So it's cool that he's doing so well at Portland, and we just were both in that NWAC tournament or NWAC championship game, you know, in 2018, coaching against each other.
No, Mike is very similar to Kelly in that respect because I do know Mike a little bit, and he just had that vision, and he was like, "No, we're gonna play this way, and it's gonna end up working." And he was right. You know?
His X's and O's are so good. I mean, I still look up on Synergy all these top Division III schools or whoever's got the highest shooting percentage. What are they running on their SOBs and their BOBs? Because I want to see exactly what they're doing. Because I mean, his isolation plays, like he'll figure out who is the worst defender and on your team and go at them. And then, okay, you sub her out. Who's the next worst defender? And then go at them. So it's impressive what they're doing.
Wow, I love that. I love to hear that. I'm a basketball nerd just like you, so hearing that sort of stuff is really cool. Um, talk a little bit about furthering your education so quickly. Like you knew what you wanted to do. At what point did you identify that? Hey, you did say you wanted to be a coach, but what point did you identify? Say, I really have to make this happen for myself now. I think so many times people are just waiting and thinking about, oh, I do want to do this, but not actually putting it into action. And the hardest part, actually, in my opinion, is just starting. And so, what gave you the motivation to just start?
Yeah, I mean, education's so important because I love the quote. I forget who said it, but like it can never be taken from you. You might lose everything in your life, but your education won't be taken from you. So I saw, of course, there was a little bit of administration side that I maybe saw myself in college athletics, and so I was like, well, the common denominator is a master's degree, and so Clemson was a great opportunity to coach. And then if I don't like coaching, then I can go maybe the administration side because I think once it's hard to get out of coaching and then get back into coaching. You have to exhaust the option of coaching, and then if you don't like it, then you can expand from there. So I just thought that was super important. And then just being a female, you just never know what opportunities are going to come up. And I always have said, like, I've always had a life list of things I want to accomplish, but my 20s are all about me is what I like wrote on my list. And so I knew I wanted to go to graduate school and I'd move anywhere to go and do it. And so the master's was super, super important to me. And the master of intercollegiate athletics was amazing because it was coaches from all over. It was athletic trainers. It was aspiring athletic directors. So it was a really good fit for what I was interested in doing. And then once I started working out with the girls at Clemson and being in, game scouts and preps and all those coaching, recruiting meetings, I was like, I'm sold. This is exactly what I want.
For
And I
sure.
think it comes all from the family atmosphere that KG had, because I didn't always know because everybody's talking about how hard coaching is, how much you're on the road, how much sacrifice it is. And it is, but if you're totally in love with it, you don't work a day in your life. And if your family can be involved in it, your little kids can be in the office or at practice, or your husband, will make dinner for your family or for your team. I don't think it's that hard. It's
For
just
sure.
you're totally ingrained into it.
No, he could tell you love the game so much, and it just shows in your enthusiasm. So you got a 2-minute elevator pitch. I want to hire you for my university as the head coach. Like, what are the things, what are the non-negotiables and things that you were going to bring to the program?
Non-negotiables, I would say the type of player we're going to bring in is going to be super hardworking and committed. Bring a family atmosphere, and it's going to be a genuine atmosphere. It's not going to be one where you're walking on eggshells or anything. It's going to be an atmosphere of like those student athletes are taken care of, as student athletes academically in the basketball. I really am a proponent of skill development. So, what I talk about this early in the recruiting process, what kind of player do they want to be? And then what kind of player do I want them to be, and make sure that they align. I don't ever want to recruit a player to be, a dominant post player if they are a 6'3" guard and they want to play out in the perimeter. So just making sure to develop the players and how they want to do and how they want to perform. And just a community. I mean, a community that backs up our girls, will come support our girls. And just always pushing the envelope. Pat Summitt did all the time, and just her demand from the administration, to make sure that their team is taken care of and their student athletes are cared for. And that's where I think saying yes to things of elementary school, middle school, to build that fan base, that's a way we can grow the women's game and to get people to show up to our games, because these little girls and little boys need these, women's basketball players to be role models for them. And then at the end, I would say just, not every girl wants to play professional basketball. So figuring out how I can help them in our women's basketball program get to where they want to be. If they want to be a nurse, then let's figure out how our team can figure out how they want to be a nurse. And there's so many life lessons that you learn in the team sport. There's 15 girls that come together from all different backgrounds, socioeconomic backgrounds, and figure out how to, accomplish a common goal.
Wow. Yeah, I'm going to hire you.
I was not prepared for that.
That's all right. I got to switch it up on you. So you talked about recruiting. What are you guys looking for right now at Southern Utah?
Players,
Yeah, go
players,
ahead.
yeah, no, players that want to be here. I mean, there's just we're actually pretty much done with our 21 class and our 22 class.
Wow.
I don't know if COVID has really hurt us. I think maybe it's helped us. I just we're there. We just our girls not only that our current team, our staff, and just the future of like women's T-Bird basketball is just so exciting because there's so much talent we have. We have 10 new kids this year that are either freshmen or transfers. And there's just so much energy around this program and what we can be. I mean, the Big Sky conference is so fun because it's so wide open. It's a great, tough conference, a lot of tradition. And so Southern Utah has been good in the past. J.R. Payne won here a championship. And
Oh, shit, Colorado, huh? She used to
yeah,
coach
at
in
Colorado.
Santa Clara. I used to go watch their practices a lot.
Yeah, she's an awesome coach. She played with Tracy, and then she obviously played for Kelly too, and then she coached under Kelly. So it's been awesome, and it's been a really, really fun coaching tree. And so she's been successful here. And another assistant, Haley Mandelko, played for JR here. So we kind of all run the same things. We have the same verbiage. We have the same peer pressure drills. So it's been really fun. But the biggest thing we look for in our kids would be, because I get asked this question all the time, is toughness and competitiveness, because we can't teach those two things. So we can teach everything else, but those are two things we can't really teach. You either usually have it or you don't. We can always maybe try to get it out of you a little bit more, but you can tell talking to a kid, you know, how competitive they are, how bad they want it. Do they want to play professional basketball? Or do they want to coach? And I think we're getting a lot of those kind of kids because this isn't their end goal. You know, they have to perform here at this level to get to their end goal. And so, and I talk to the kids about WNBA all the time, or NCAA. And I think that's a nice thing for us to kind of realize, you know, we want them to watch those games because that just means they're that much more invested in the game.
Can you paint a picture for how difficult it is, not only just to play at the Division I level, but any level of college basketball? What type of dedication does the student athlete need to have in high school? Because I think so many people aren't self-aware enough to understand the type of work ethic that you need to put in. And like you mentioned, there are skill levels at every single level, Division III to Division I, and even NAIA. But so many people get caught up. I got to go Division I. I got to do Division I because those are the ones that are on TV, or specifically like in this area, the Pac-12. But if you're not a top, usually 300 player in the nation, you're not probably going to go to those places. And even if you're being recruited by Southern Utah, like, you have to be really, really good to make it, at that level. So talk to me a little bit about that side of the recruiting.
Yeah, I mean, you have to be super dedicated to what you're doing. I would say the biggest thing is it has to be your passion. It can't be anybody else's passion. And so I think maybe that's where kids, it is their parents' passion. We used to say, the parents sometimes want to have their kid go to a t-shirt school. So then their friends' parents, recognize where their kid goes to school. But first and foremost, it has to be your passion, and it has to be what you're dedicated to day in and day out. I'm not saying that you have to eat, sleep, breathe basketball to be a really good Division I basketball player, but you need to know what it takes to be good at this level. You have to take care of your grades. You have to take care of your time management. You have to be in the gym all the time, getting better. You have to have a weight system. And you obviously have to usually be on some sort of good winning team, AAU or high school level, So, and I'm a proponent of multiple sports. I think they can play multiple sports in high school. Obviously, there's things that it's tough to navigate if it goes through club season and stuff like that maybe you won't get seen. I think that there's probably a ton of kids that don't get seen because they do play multiple sports. But to make it up this level, you need to be super passionate, super dedicated, and you just have to have kind of a little chip on your shoulder of some toughness mentally, because there's going to be days where you're literally going from 6 in the morning to 9 p.m. and it's not just one day, it's usually 5 days in a row, just with getting all your study hall and your tutors and your strength coach and on the court and the individual and your film session, and you're basically running home
Right.
to take a 20-minute nap just so you can run back to the gym to be on time for practice. So it's not made for everybody.
How many of the kids that you recruit are able to do multiple things well? Like, shoot well, score it well at the mid range, and finish around the basket, or do mostly the people that you recruit can do something really, really good, like shooting? Like I'm a really good
Yeah.
shooter. How many
Yeah.
are able to do all the things?
I would say one or two things when they come in, unless they're a transfer that has, a really good package. But, post players, I look for obviously athleticism in every single position, but post players, I'm specifically looking for hands and feet. If they have that, I feel like I can develop it. Or if they're a really good rebounder, we'll develop, the offensive side. And then for guards, I would say they come in with one or two skills, obviously more the better. But we've recruited kids that are 6 foot, just really good shooters, and then we're gonna have to expand their game defensively and going to the basket. And then point guards, obviously, a little bit more of just like how well do they handle the ball, how good of leaders are they, and most of them usually can shoot. I mean, we run the ball screen system. We actually run exactly what we ran at Oregon, and so it's only going to work if you can stretch out the court with some shooters.
For sure. And I tell people all the time, stick to your strengths. Every coach that I've come on here and talk with talks about that exact same thing. Like you're not going to be able to do three, four things. You're
Yeah,
probably going to be able to do one really good, and then you might have the secondary thing that you can do pretty good. And I think it's just very important to stick to your strengths.
absolutely.
You talked about 15 girls coming together from all different walks of life. Obviously, the social unrest that is going on here in the United States and worldwide is just at its peak. So, how do you guys, as a staff, because you've played with minorities and you coach minorities as well. How have you guys, helped them out during this time? Because I think it's a conversation that obviously needs to be had.
Yeah. Well, we had weekly Zoom meetings in the summer. And when, obviously when it first started, every single Zoom meeting was about social injustice. And our team was really, really good about it because they were pretty passionate about it and how they felt. And our team is diverse. And so there was just great examples of, kids that have gone through stuff and kids that haven't gone through stuff. And then, the kids that have gone through stuff, they would explain it to their teammates and their teammates would just break down because they had no idea what they were going through. And I saw that at my time playing collegiate basketball and just the different backgrounds we came from. Some of my teammates were sending their money back to their parents, and so there's just so many things you go through as a team when you come from such different areas, international, Pacific Northwest, the South to the Midwest. And so it's been really good for us to kind of come together. And I think, obviously we hadn't been able to spend time in the summer together, but like our bond was so strong in the summer because of our Zoom meetings. And then we had small group meetings where it was no coaches and it was just the girls. And so they kind of had a safe spot to share things just between them. And I think our girls, because we had 10 new girls, and it was, it gave them an opportunity for them to get so much closer off the court than what it usually would be them coming here to train and practice starting and all that kind of stuff. So I think it's been really good for our team to get closer through all this tough trial.
Wow, I love the response, and I'm glad you guys have kind of gone through it together. I think a lot of teams have been doing the same thing, and it's the right, it's the right thing to do, and I think it's much needed. And if you're a coach now, you have to be aware of those things because you're not, you know, you're not just letting the players play for you. Like what can you do for them to help them through the difficult times that they're going through on a day-to-day basis? And we can learn too as coaches. Like there was times where I learned from the players on their experiences, and they learned from some of my experiences that I've had. And I think it's important in coaches that are out there listening to this. You have to bring stuff like that up and have these difficult conversations because, at the end of the day, you mentioned it. We're just, we're basketball coaches, but we're really people that are trying to better everybody's life, and including our own, by this game. But more importantly, what we can do for everybody else, and that's what a coach is. We're teachers, so.
Yeah. And so it's been a super hard year, but at the same time, I think our team has done a really, really good job of coming together through all the unrest that's going on and making sure that, they're all signed up to vote because that's exactly what we need to do.
For sure. This entire podcast is advice to all young coaches, right? But if there is any piece of advice that you would leave everybody with before we start wrapping it up, what would it be?
I'm going to keep it pretty easy. I'm going to say get the experience and don't take yourself too seriously. Just go out and have fun. Because if you're having fun and you're doing what you're passionate about, all of it's going to be taken care of. I mean, just keep learning, studying the game. And if, you love it, you're exactly where you need to be.
Who are your top 5 favorite coaches of all time?
Whew. I'm going to say Kelly.
And you don't have to know them either. It could just be,
Yeah, no, I'm going to say Kelly. Mm-hmm. I'm going to say Tracy. I'm going to say Cheryl Reeve. I'm going to say I'm reading a Vince Lombardi play right now, and I'm like juiced up about it because all he does is talk about winning. So I'm like, yeah. So I'm going to say Lombardi. And then my last one, I'm going to say Gino.
Gino, yeah.
I'm always listening to him and what he's saying, and I think he's spot on about everything.
For sure. He definitely keeps it 100 all the time, and he's a great coach. Obviously from winning, is it 9 championships or is it 11?
I think it's 11. He's
11, yeah.
Yeah, he beat John Wooden.
You just lose track. If there's somebody that we should bring on this show,
he would be number 1, John Wooden. I can't believe I forgot about him.
Yeah, you gotta have him on there. Did you have Pat Summitt too or no?
Shoot, I forgot about her. There's so many good coaches.
You can't have 10. We can't have 10. So your list is good. Your list is good at 7. We'll add.
Jackson would be another one. I mean, there's so many ones.
For sure. If there's
Timberwolves, one more. That's another one.
Who is it?
Flip Saunders.
Flip.
At the Timberwolves, yeah.
Rest in peace, Flip, and his son is now coaching. Is he still there?
He is.
Ryan,
yeah.
Ryan, right?
He's young too.
He is. He's been around basketball his whole life. If there's somebody that we should bring on this podcast, who would it be? And if you say the name, then you're gonna have to make the connection.
I think you should bring Kelly. Have you had him yet?
I haven't had him on. No, okay. I'd love to have him on.
Connection for you.
Okay. Well, this has been a pleasure. You are a ray of energy, and just, you're going to be a head coach pretty soon. Obviously, you're trying to do your thing at, Southern Utah, but you're pretty impressive, I must say. And it was very nice to meet you, and I'm glad to have you on. I'd love to come out there and watch some of your practices.
Anytime, come for a practice, come for a week, come for a game. You can stay with us. We're an open book.
Definitely. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate you.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And go D-Rob and the Aces tonight.
Yeah, let's get it.
Thanks, Chris. Appreciate you.
Thank you for listening to the Beyond the Buckets podcast. Please remember to subscribe, rate, and share the show with your friends. And until next time, take care.